Hello everyone, it's Leah Cooper here, and today I'm bringing you my May wrap-up part 1, as well as my currently reading. So, I haven't read as much so far this month as I did last month, but I have a couple of things on the go. I have read 4 books, and I have several more books I need to get to before the end of the month. So, I want to try this whole part 1 and part 2 wrap-ups, like a mid-month wrap-up and an end-of-the-month wrap-up, to try to keep these videos a little bit shorter and a little bit more manageable to watch. So let's just jump right in. The first thing I read in May was Think of England by KJ Charles. This is a historical romance set in the early 20th century. The protagonist is a veteran of one of the Afghanistan wars from like the early 20th century, like, you know, the 1910s. And he has been injured in an accident. A shipment of guns blew up in the hands of his unit, and he's lost a bunch of fingers on one hand, and now he's returned to England to try to prove that the guns were purposefully sabotaged to ruin an arms company so that a rival arms company could swoop in and monopolize the business. And he's gone into the countryside, into the home of the man who owns the rival arms company, to investigate him. And while he's there, he runs into this queer, artsy poet guy who rubs him at first totally the wrong way and who has his own agenda. And so it's really delightful, clever, funny, interesting, hot. I mean, KJ Charles is probably my favorite author. She writes amazing historical fiction. She writes really delightful characters. I love Curtis, who is the protagonist. I love Daniel, who's the poetic love interest. And this was a reread. I gave it 5 stars the first time, gave it 5 stars the second time. I love it. I highly recommend that if you have any interest in jumping into the romance genre, you should check out KJ Charles. The second thing I read was The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Now, I previously tried to read this in March, I believe. Started it, got about 45 pages into it, put it down, and picked up a bunch of other books and ended up returning it to the library. Basically, I did not get along with this book at the time. Now, I need to read it because The Obelisk Gate has been nominated for the BookTube Best of F Awards, and I need to read that book. So I gave this book a month, didn't touch it, came back to it this month, determined to read it. So the first 150 pages of this, I was really struggling to get into it. And it's not that it was written in second person. Some of it is written in second person, some of it's written in third person. That's not necessarily the issue I had with it. I just really struggled to be invested in the protagonist or the protagonists, the points of view that we get. Eventually, around the 100-page mark, the plot started gripping me, so I really wanted to know what was going on, even though I was kind of slogging through it. But after the 150-page mark, man, I finally got hooked on the characters. I was super sucked in with the plot, and I blazed through the rest of the book. So I'm really glad that I came back to it. I'm really glad that I set it aside too, because it made it less of a chore to come back to it. And I'm really glad that I stuck with it to that 150-page mark, because it was totally worth reading. It's really interesting. It's definitely a little strange. You know, you don't encounter a whole lot of books in second person. Basically, it's a fantasy book taking place on a continent that has a lot of seismic activity. There are people there who have the ability to manipulate the earth. They have been kind of enslaved, subjugated by the rest of the empire, and are used to control earthquakes and keep towns and cities safe. And if they, fall out of line at all, they're killed. And it's very dystopian how they live. And every so often you have a kind of cataclysmic seismic event that changes the weather, changes the season. So you have a 5th season that usually kills a lot of people, and everyone kind of has to go into lockdown mode to try to survive the season. This is part of a trilogy. Like I said, Obelisk Gate, I actually have right here. I'm going to be reading it really soon. And the world is really interesting, really unique, has a lot of great representation. It's extremely diverse. It's really interesting. And like I said, the plot sucks you in, and the mystery of the obelisks and the quakes and Father Earth is just so intriguing, and I just cannot wait to read more. After that, I picked up another book by Catherine Valente, and that was Palimpsest. which I was really excited to read, and unfortunately I didn't particularly care for. I only gave this book 3 stars, and I feel like that might have been a little bit generous. I struggled with this book. This book took me like 10 days to read, which is crazy. It's not that long. It's only 350 pages. And I like the concept. So basically it's about a weird fantasy land that you can only get to by sleeping with someone who has a portion of the map of the city tattooed on their skin, essentially. And when you sleep with someone like that, you will get another piece of the map. And then you have to go back to different parts of the city. You have to keep sleeping with different people who have different pieces of the city mapped on them. It has 4 protagonists, and so 4 POVs. I didn't really like any of the POVs. I really didn't like a couple of the characters. I sort of liked one character. She was the second point of view introduced. Her name was November. I kind of liked her. She was a beekeeper. She was kind of interesting. She had a relationship with a woman in the fantasy city, which could have been really interesting, but we didn't get a whole lot of them. We only got like maybe 2 chapters with just them interacting. Kind of one of the themes in the story is that people who go to Palimpsest are trying to figure out a way that they can immigrate there permanently. There's a lot of themes about war, immigration, sex, relationships, and it is interesting, but I just didn't care for it too much. I didn't get sucked into it, and I just struggled to read it. One of the things I usually love about Catherine M. Valente is her writing style. Like, her writing is so beautiful. Her voice for each book is usually so unique and fits the book so perfectly. And I'm not going to say her tone didn't fit this book, but I also would say that her tone in this book was the most muddled, muddy, sloggy writing I've ever read from her. It very much felt overwritten for the sake of being overwritten. I don't think the language always enhanced the book and what was happening and the characters the way her writing usually does. And so I was just really disappointed. This is one of her older books. It was published in 2009. It's not her first book. So I'll be curious to read her she has 2, I don't remember the names of them, but I'll be interested to read those 2 and to see if her voice is kind of the same overwritten for overwritten's sake, or if it fits a little bit better, those stories. It could just be her voice has developed more in the last 7 years. I mean, that is reasonable, you know? I would not recommend it at all as the first Catherine M. Valente to pick up. And honestly, I'm not sure I would recommend it at all. Which is saying a lot, because Radiance might be my favorite book of this year. Or it's in my top 10 favorite books of this year. I don't know. Palimpsest didn't work for me. So while I was struggling to get through Palimpsest, I picked up Autumn by Ali Smith because I saw it at the library, and it was much smaller. It was much smaller than I thought it was going to be. It was only like 260 pages. I gave it, I think, 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was the perfect thing to pick up to read little bits of it in between, you know, reading bits of Palimpsest. I think it was great. It's definitely a novel of our time. The only thing is, it does rely very heavily on knowledge of Kristen Keeler and Paulina Bodie. One of them is an actress, I want to say, and one of them is kind of like an artist actress. I had never heard of either of these women beforehand, and they are very central to the themes and recurring images in the book. And so I think I could have gotten a lot more if I knew more about them. They're both British figures, obviously. One of them was involved in like a scandal back in the 70s with a British politician, which I think if you were British, you might know that. I mean, it's not on the same level as like Monica Lewinsky, but like Monica Lewinsky would probably be would make more of an impact to an American reader than like a foreign reader. I feel that's kind of analogous. So I definitely think I could have gotten more from it, but that's just me, lack of knowledge. Otherwise, I thought it was really great. She has a very kind of stream of consciousness style that I know isn't going to be for everyone, but I really loved it. It was kind of poetic, beautiful. The way she wrote the scenes with Elizabeth dealing with the bureaucracy, because one of the things is that this book takes place after Brexit, and it deals with a younger woman going about her life, existing in England post-Brexit, and visiting an old family friend who is in a care home. He's like 101 and he's pretty much dying, and just reflections on her interactions with him and her interactions with art And it's really interesting. One of the threads in the book is that she is trying to renew her passport and just hitting one roadblock after another because of bureaucracy. Those scenes in particular were written so viscerally. The tension in them was so strong. I was anxious, angry on Elizabeth's behalf, and it was so tangible. The scenes were so well written. This is, of course, the first book in a quartet she's writing based on each of the seasons. I think Winter's coming out later this year. I will definitely be picking it up when it comes out. And then a couple of the things that I'm reading. So this month I've been reading the Subterranean Press anthology. It's kind of a best of short story collection from Subterranean Press. It's incredibly long. It's like 750 pages. There are 30 short stories in it. And it's coming out this summer, I want to say in August. So I will definitely be doing a full review of this collection once I finished reading it. My kind of project this month was, since there's 30 short stories, I've been reading one short story every day. I'm about halfway through it right now, and I'm enjoying it. Because it's a best of collection by 30 different authors, there's kind of a wide range of genres represented. Most of the short stories have a speculative bent to them. A couple of them kind of don't. Some of them have been really clever, really funny. Many of them have had incredible worlds. And I'm definitely going to be taking away from this a couple of author names that I will be checking out there, like to see if they have any full-length books, because they can definitely write. Some of the stories have been a miss, and mostly that has to do with genre. I have a feeling it's going to be like 3.75 overall, unless there's a couple of stories that just like really hit it out of the park for me. I will talk more about this in a full review once I finished reading it. And then the other thing that I'm currently reading is Raven Stratagem by Yoon-Ha Lee. So this book is coming out in early June, and when I heard that people were getting ARCs put on NetGalley, I rushed over to NetGalley to apply to be given an ARC because I freaking loved Nine Fox Gambit. Again, Nine Fox Gambit's probably on my top 10 list so far of books that I've read this year. I'm probably going to finish it tomorrow, so hopefully I'll have a review of Raven Stratagem up by Saturday. It's kind of a 4-star read for me. Definitely different than the first one. The points of view are totally different, even though Shuos Judeo is there. And I can't really I don't want to go into it or talk about the plot right now, but I'm still really enjoying it because I freaking love Yoon-Ha Lee's writing style. It's so crisp, it flows, it's not overly complicated, it's just, it sucks you in, it's immersive, and it's just so pleasant to sit with one of his books and just read. And so yeah, I'm enjoying it. I want to see how it ends, because this series is one of those things that's just like so layered. It's hard to form an opinion about it until you get to the end, until you've like cracked open, I don't want to say the onion, but yeah, until you've cracked it open and seen what's inside. It's really hard to figure out how you feel about it. But I'm enjoying the process of reading it. And then after that, the next thing I'm going to be reading is A Conjuring of Light. It finally came in from the library for me. It's the third book in the Shades of Magic trilogy, I think it's called, by V. Schwab. It's really long. I have 3 weeks to read it, so I'm really going to try to get it read this weekend, I think, because I want to do a review of that entire trilogy. So maybe look for that next week. It hasn't been like a spectacular reading month. Palimpsest kind of set me back, but I'm back in the swing of things. I'm speeding along once again, and I've got a lot of really great things coming up this month. So let me know what you're reading right now, and if you have any plans to check out any of the books that I've talked about. I'll see you guys all in my next video. Bye.